The wolves were close enough that Emma could hear their breath. She pressed her back against the cabin door, rifle trembling in her frost-cracked hands. 3 winters alone had taught her to read the forest's warnings, the sudden silence of birds. The way deer tracks vanished near the creek. Tonight, the warning screamed. The child's cry split the darkness. Emma's head snapped toward the sound. Through the pines, a small figure stumbled through snow that reached her knees. Behind her, a man's silhouette moved with the deliberate calm of someone who'd faced worse than wolves. "Get inside," Emma heard herself shout, though every instinct said bar the door. The man swept the child into his arms and ran. Emma fired twice over their heads, not to kill, but to scatter the pack. The wolves melted into shadow as the strangers crashed onto her porch. Up close, the man was younger than his weathered face suggested. 30. Maybe. His daughter couldn't be more than 7. Shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Both wore clothes too fine for traveling on foot through wilderness. "Lost our horses," the man said. His voice was rough gravel smoothed by something else education. Maybe got turned around in the storm. Emma's cabin had 1 room, 1 bed, 1 winter's worth of supplies that wouldn't stretch to feed 3. She stepped aside anyway. "One night," she said. "Storm breaks. You move on." The man's eyes held hers, gray as January sky, carrying their own kind of cold. "One night. You have my word." He didn't offer his name. "Out here?" That was courtesy. Emma barred the door behind them and tried not to calculate how many days of flour she'd just gambled on strangers who might slit her throat before dawn. The child was already asleep against her father's chest. Small fingers clutched in his coat like she'd never let go. The cabin warmed slowly. Emma hung their wet coats near the fire, careful not to touch the fine wool longer than necessary. The man's boots were custom leather, worn but expensive. His daughter's dress had lace at the collar. These weren't drifters or desperados, which made them more dangerous, not less. "Name's Sarah?" the child whispered, suddenly awake. Her eyes were dark and solemn. "Papa says I shouldn't talk to strangers, but you saved us from the wolves." "Sarah?" "Hush." The man's voice was gentle but firm. Emma ladled stew into wooden bowls, thin broth with more potato than meat, but hot. She watched the man eat slowly, breaking his bread into small pieces for his daughter first. A gentleman's habit, a father's devotion. "You're far from any town," Emma said. "We like it that way." He met her gaze without apology. "You live here alone. 3 years now. That's brave." Something in his tone said he understood the weight of that word. Or desperate. Both. Emma set down her spoon. "You running from something or toward it?" The man smiled. "Brief as summer lightning. Depends on the day." Sarah's head drooped against his shoulder. He shifted her carefully, settling her on the bed Emma had offered without asking what she'd sleep on herself. "You didn't have to take us in," he said quietly. "Didn't have to leave you to the wolves either." Emma poked the fire. "Out here, you help folks. That's the law that matters. Even when you can't afford to." She looked at him, then really looked. Beneath the trail dust and exhaustion, she saw something broken, something familiar. "Especially then," she said. The man nodded slowly. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled. Outside, wind howled promises of harder cold to come. "Get some rest," Emma said. "You'll need your strength tomorrow." He didn't argue, which told her exactly how spent he was. She watched him settle on the floor near his daughter, close enough to shield her from any threat. Emma wrapped herself in a thin blanket and sat by the fire through the long, cold night. Dawn broke gray and bitter. Emma woke to find the man already up, feeding the fire with wood from her dwindling stack. He moved quietly, competently, like someone accustomed to making himself useful. "Storm's worse," he said. "Can't travel in this." Emma peered through the frost-thick window. Snow fell in sheets. erasing the world beyond her porch. The forest had vanished into white nothing. Her heart sank. One night was charity. 2 nights. 3 that was survival math she couldn't afford. "I'll hunt," the man said, reading her silence. "Earn our keep." In that, Emma gestured at the blizzard. "I've hunted in worse." He was already reaching for his coat. "You have traps set. Creek line. But they won't have caught anything in this weather. Then I'll track." He checked his rifle with practiced hands. "Sarah stays with you." It was a question, not a command. Emma nodded. The child woke as her father kissed her forehead. "Be good for Miss Emma," he murmured. "You'll come back." Sarah's voice was very small. "Always." He said it like an oath sworn on something sacred. Then he was gone. Swallowed by the storm, Sarah sat on the bed, silent and watchful. Emma tried to remember how to talk to children. It had been so long since her sister's kids had visited. Before the fever took them all. "You know how to sew?" Emma asked finally. Sarah brightened. "Mama taught me before she stopped." "Before?" "Good." Emma pulled out a torn dress. "Let's fix this together." They worked in comfortable quiet, needles flashing in firelight. Sarah's stitches were careful, precise. Her mother had taught her well. "Papa's sad a lot," Sarah said suddenly. "Since Mama went to heaven." Emma's hand stilled. "How long?" 2 years. "But he doesn't talk about her anymore." Sarah bit her lip. "Does that mean he's forgetting?" "No." "Honey." Emma's throat tightened. "Sometimes people go quiet because they remember too much." Sarah nodded like she understood things no 7-year-old should. Outside, the storm screamed. Inside, 2 souls missing the same shape of love sat side by side and mended broken things. The man returned at dusk with 2 rabbits and frost in his beard. Emma had kept soup hot, stretched thin but nourishing. He thawed by the fire, shaking so hard his teeth rattled, while Sarah pressed against him like she could will warmth into his bones. "Foolish," Emma said. But she was already heating stones to wrap in blankets. "You'll catch your death proving you're useful. Can't take without giving." His words came through blue lips, not from someone who's already given everything. Something in Emma's chest cracked open. She'd been alone so long she'd forgotten what it meant when someone saw her clearly. That night, they ate well. Sarah fell asleep quickly, worn out from worry. Emma cleaned while the man sat near the fire. Finally still. "You haven't asked my name," he said. "Figured you'd tell me if you wanted." "James." He paused. "James Colton." The name meant nothing to Emma. "Should it?" "I have land," he continued. "A lot of it. Cattle. Horses. A house big enough to echo." His voice was hollow. "Everything except what matters." Emma sat across from him. "Money doesn't cure loneliness." "No." James looked at his daughter. "But it can't buy what she needs either. A mother's love. A home that feels safe. She has you. That's not nothing. I'm half a father on my best days." His hands clenched. "She deserves better. She deserves you whole," Emma said quietly. "That's different than perfect." James's eyes found hers across the firelight. For a long moment, something unspoken moved between them, recognition of shared grief. Maybe understanding that came from walking the same hard road. "Why are you out here alone?" he asked. "Lost everyone I loved to fever. Couldn't stay in town where everything reminded me." Emma's voice didn't shake. She'd had 3 years to practice. Came here to rebuild or die trying. "Which one's winning?" She smiled. "Brittle as January ice. Ask me tomorrow." The fire burned low. Neither moved to add wood. Sometimes darkness felt safer than the light that showed too much truth. "One more day," James said. "Storm should break by then." Emma nodded, ignoring the strange ache in her chest. One more day. Then she'd be alone again. Just like she'd learned to prefer it. Morning brought silence. The storm had passed. leaving the world buried and sparkling under hard sun. Emma woke to find James already outside, clearing snow from her porch with a shovel he must have found in the lean-to. Sarah helped, her small hands red with cold, laughing as she threw snowballs at the trees. "You don't have to do that," Emma called. "I know." James didn't stop. "But your roof's got a weak spot near the chimney. Snow that heavy will cave it in." Emma climbed up to look. He was right, she'd been meaning to fix it before winter. But lumber was expensive, and her hands weren't as strong as they'd once been. "I can patch it," James said. "If you've got spare wood." "I don't." "Then I'll ride to town. There's one about 15 miles south." "Isn't there?" Emma stared. "In this snow. On foot. Found our horses this morning. They'd sheltered in a canyon." He smiled slightly. Stubborn animals, like their owner. The horses were magnificent, sleek, well-bred, worth more than Emma's entire cabin. James saddled the larger one with ease, moving with the confidence of a man who'd lived in leather his whole life. "I'll be back before dark," he said. "You don't owe me. I know what I owe." His voice was firm. "And it's more than a patched roof." Emma. Her name in his mouth felt like a promise. She watched him ride south until he vanished into white distance, then turned to find Sarah watching her with knowing eyes. "Papa likes you," the child said simply. "He's just being kind." "No." Sarah shook her head. "He laughs different when you talk, like he used to with Mama." Emma's heart stuttered. "Sweet girl. That's not... Will you be my mama?" The question hit like a bullet. Emma crouched down, taking Sarah's cold hands. "Honey, your papa and I just met. We're strangers helping each other through a storm. Mama always said God sends the right people when you stop looking." Sarah's voice was utterly certain. "Papa stopped looking. Then we found you." Emma had no answer for that kind of faith. That night, James returned with lumber, nails, and food enough to last weeks. Emma started to protest, but he cut her off. "Let me do this," he said quietly. "Please." So she did. 3 days became a week. James fixed the roof, then the sagging porch rail, then the door that stuck in its frame. He worked from dawn to dusk, and Emma stopped pretending she wanted him to leave. Sarah bloomed like spring flowers, teaching Emma songs her mother had sung, learning to braid Emma's hair with clumsy, earnest fingers. The cabin filled with laughter for the first time in 3 years. Evenings, after Sarah slept, Emma and James sat by the fire and traded stories. He told her about his ranch, thousands of acres, a dozen hands, herds that stretched to the horizon. She told him about the family she'd lost, the sister she still dreamed about some nights. "I should go back," James said one night. "My foreman's capable, but there are decisions only I can make." "Then go." Emma kept her voice steady. "Come with us." The words hung in the warm air. Emma's heart hammered. "James, I'm not asking you to marry me." He leaned forward. "Earnest." "Not yet. But come to the ranch. See if Sarah's right. If this is more than kindness, I have nothing to offer you." Emma gestured at her threadbare dress, her calloused hands. "I'm not the kind of woman who fits in a rancher's world. You're exactly the kind of woman who does." His voice was rough, strong, honest. "Good. You barely know me. I know you gave everything you had to strangers in a storm." James reached across the space between them. "Not quite touching. I know my daughter smiles again. I know I feel human for the first time since my wife died." He paused. "I know I'm half in love with you, Emma, and I don't want to walk away to find out what whole feels like." Emma's breath caught. Every instinct screamed to protect herself, to say no, to stay safe in her lonely cabin where nothing could hurt her anymore. But Sarah's laughter echoed in her memory, and James's hands building her a stronger home, and the warmth of being seen, truly seen. After 3 years of invisible grief, one condition: she said finally. Anything. If it doesn't work, if I don't fit, you let me leave with dignity. No charity, no pity. James's smile was sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Deal. He held out his hand. Emma took it. His palm was warm and rough and felt like coming home. The ranch took Emma's breath away. Rolling hills, endless sky, a house that could swallow her cabin 10 times over. Hands tipped their hats as James rode in with Emma beside him and Sarah chattering between them. But the whispers started immediately. Who's that? Emma heard in the stable. Some woman he found in the wilderness. Poor thing probably thinks she's caught herself a rich man. Emma's spine stiffened. She'd survived 3 winters alone. She could survive gossip. James introduced her to his foreman, a leathered man named Dutch who looked her over with sharp eyes. Ma'am, he said, respectful but reserved. I can work, Emma said. Don't expect charity. Dutch's expression shifted, surprised. Then approving. Kitchen needs help. Cook's been complaining for months. I'll start tomorrow. That night, James showed her to a guest room tasteful. Spacious? Nothing like the luxury she'd imagined. Take your time, he said. No pressure. But Sarah had other ideas. She appeared at Emma's door in her nightgown. Clutching a worn doll, will you tuck me in? She asked. Like you did at the cabin. Emma's throat tightened. She followed Sarah to a bedroom decorated in pink and white, clearly untouched since her mother died. Sarah climbed into bed, then patted the space beside her. Mama used to lie here and tell stories, she said. Emma hesitated. This felt sacred, intimate, crossing a threshold she couldn't uncross. Please. Sarah's eyes were huge. So Emma lay down and told the story of a brave girl who befriended wolves, and a father who learned to smile again, and a woman who'd forgotten she was strong until she had to be. Sarah fell asleep mid-tale, her hand wrapped around Emma's. James found them there an hour later. His expression was unreadable in the lamplight, grief and hope and something fiercer, more fragile. Thank you, he whispered. Emma carefully extracted herself and followed him to the hallway. She's filling a mother-shaped hole with me, Emma said. What happens when she realizes I'm not her mama? She knows that. James's voice was gentle. She's choosing you anyway. The question is whether you're brave enough to let her. Emma thought of her cabin, her solitude, her careful survival. Then she thought of Sarah's laughter, James's hands building, the warmth of being chosen. I'm terrified, she admitted. Good. James smiled. That means it matters. He kissed her forehead, chaste, tender, and left her standing in the hallway of a house that might become home. 2 months passed like a dream. Emma worked in the kitchen, earning respect with her bread and steady hands. Sarah followed her everywhere, chattering about school and horses and the kitten the barn cat had. James courted her properly slow rides at sunset. Careful conversations, his hand at her waist during ranch dances. But whispers followed Emma like shadows. Gold digger? Thinks she can replace a real lady. Poor James. Taken in by a pretty face and hard luck story, Emma ignored them until the day she overheard the banker's wife in town. Millionaire cowboy like James Colton could have anyone? The woman sneered. Instead, he's playing house with some wilderness beggar. It's embarrassing. Emma's hands shook as she loaded her wagon. She'd survived wolves in winter and grief. Why did cruel words cut deeper? That night, James found her on the porch, staring at stars. What happened? He asked. Nothing. Emma's voice was hollow. Just remembered what I am, what I'll always be to them. And what's that? Not enough. The words tasted like ash, not refined enough, not educated enough, not... Emma, stop. James turned her to face him. I don't give a damn what they think. But I do. Her voice broke. Sarah deserves a mother who fits. You deserve a wife who knows which fork to use. I deserve a woman who'd give strangers her last meal in a storm. James's grip was firm. Sarah deserves someone who loves her without conditions. We both deserve you. Emma. Exactly as you are. You don't understand. I understand I'm falling in love with you. The words were raw, honest. I understand my daughter calls you Mama when she thinks I'm not listening. I understand I wake up grateful you're here and terrified you'll leave. He cupped her face. I understand that if you walk away, it won't be because you're not enough. It'll be because you don't believe you are. Emma's eyes burned. What if I fail you? What if you don't? James's thumb brushed her cheek. What if we build something good together? What if love is enough? Is it? Emma whispered. Is love ever enough? Only one way to find out. He kissed her then soft. Seeking. A question her heart answered before her head could object. When they broke apart, Sarah was watching from the window, grinning like sunrise. Spring came early that year. The wedding was small, just ranch hands. Dutch, and Sarah in a white dress that made her glow. The preacher spoke of new beginnings and second chances, while Emma gripped James's hands and tried to believe this was real. I do, James said. Voice steady. I do, Emma echoed, and meant it with her whole battered heart. Sarah threw wildflowers, laughing as petals caught in Emma's hair. The hands cheered. Dutch nodded approval, and James kissed his bride like she was air and he'd been drowning. That night, they stood on the porch of their home, no longer his, but theirs, watching the land stretch endlessly under stars. Thank you, Emma said softly. For what? Getting lost in my woods? She leaned into his warmth. For giving me a reason to open the door. James wrapped his arms around her. Thank you for being brave enough to let strangers in. Sarah emerged in her nightgown, rubbing sleepy eyes. Can I sleep with you tonight? She asked. Like we used to at the cabin. Emma and James exchanged glances, newlyweds with a chaperone. Unconventional but perfect. Always, Emma said, lifting Sarah into her arms. They went inside together, his family built from broken pieces and wild grace. Behind them, the door closed on winter's loneliness. Ahead, firelight flickered warm and gold, a beacon promising that even in the hardest seasons, kindness could kindle home. Emma had learned the wilderness truth. Sometimes salvation comes disguised as strangers in a storm. Sometimes love arrives when you've stopped looking, carried on wolf song and prayer. Sometimes the bravest thing is simply opening the door. Outside, spring wind whispered through pines. Inside, 3 hearts beat steady as the land, strong as the promise they'd made to build, to heal, to choose each other every day. The wolves were distant now. The cold had passed, and in the morning, they'd wake to a world made new.